بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين وصلى الله على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله. لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا يقربنا إليك يا رب العالمين. اللهم افتح لنا فتوح العارفين ووفقنا توفيق الصالحين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من أن أضل أو أضل، أزل أو أزل، أظلم أو أظلم، أجهل أو يجهل علي. رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح. آمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, welcome to you all to our today's session from the series Quranic Lessons for Life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us with His infinite mercy, and may He accept and include us all among His righteous, pious slaves. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Dear brothers and sisters, the lesson that we are at today is the lesson number 20. And I come to you today with this lesson from Surah Al-Hujurat, chambers and apartments. This is a very, subhanAllah, profound, one of the very profound chapters of the Holy Quran, once again, in terms of social, moral context of a person's life. Because this surah teaches us many valuable lessons and morals and it imparts many important teachings upon us. Among them being this ayat that I have chosen for today's lesson. It is the ayat number 12 from Surah Al-Hujurat, which is 49 Surah of the Quran. And it is this. And it is very known to all of us, by the way, this ayat and the ruling in this regard. That remember, brothers and sisters, one of the themes of Quran, one of the Quranic themes is to repeat things that are very important, relevant to human life. You don't find in the Quran always everything new being said for the first time. You will come across countless verses that have been repeated over many places. Why? As I said before in one of our previous sessions, due to its relevance and importance. The more you are reminded, the easier it is for you to remember. So that's the reason. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanding Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the Holy Quran said, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, your job, your prophetic job description is not always going to teach something new to people. Rather, you repeat some of the teachings that you have previously taught them, because, human beings, we can remember so much. Always, either we forget or things, go off track, and we put them in the corner. That reminder, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, remind them, because reminding them is always going to benefit them. فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. So this ayat, although has been only mentioned one place in the Quran, in this regard, in this context, however, this concept is very, very known to pretty much all Muslims, due to the severity of this issue. However, again, as I said, it is important to revisit this. So it is this ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه واتقوا الله إن الله غفور رحيم. The translation of this ayat is, by the way, this is not the entire ayat. half of the verse. There is another half precedes that. And I do not want to discuss it because it has its own application and explanation. So time is very limited. Therefore, I will only focus on this part, which speaks all alone regarding one particular human weakness and one particular moral disease. So listen to the translation first. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands in this ayat once again to you and I as believers. Because this verse begins with Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Or those of you who have faith in Allah and believed in the teachings of Allah and the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the ayat goes this way: وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. Do not backbite one another. Do not backbite one another. أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَنْ يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا فَكَرِهْتُمُوهُ. Would any of you like to eat his dead brother's flesh? Would any of you would like to eat the flesh of his own dead brother? And the Quran further says, which is obvious reaction and response from every human being pretty much, that فَكَرِهْتُمُوهُ. No, you will certainly hate to do so. You will certainly hate to do so. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ. Hence, be mindful of your Lord and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Ghafurur Rahim. And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very forgiving and very merciful. So this is the ayat. Now, you have an idea about the topic, brothers and sisters, what I'm going to say in the following moments, and as a relevant points to this discussion. And Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. When we examine this ayat, brothers and sisters, what we learn that there is a serious crisis in human behavior and morals across the globe, especially in our time. And that is indeed very serious. Among the things that make this issue as serious is this one, this disease particular one that Quran talks about. And that is backbiting. Because backbiting is among the list of serious moral crises and moral diseases of human society at large. And the Muslim community is not immune and not exempt from this. And may Allah forgive me first and foremost as I speak to you. I am guilty of it and I ask Allah for forgiveness. And it is once again a reminder to myself and to all of us to look into the severity of this sin. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it haram, period. And Islam has regarded this one as among the major sins in Islam. And as I explained to you, you will see that what makes this sin as a very significantly different than many other sins, as the ayat explains itself. So the reason I chose this because, as I said, among the things that have really plagued the Muslim Ummah in our time is this sin and this disease, this moral disease. People, so much so that people don't realize at times that where they are sitting, what time they are in, what action they are engaged in. For example, you probably have heard or seen and witnessed and experienced individuals, at least I have experienced that, it is sad to say, that you will see individuals sometimes sitting in the best of the places, for example, the masjid. Masjid, as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, أَحَبُّ الْبِقَاعِ إِلَى اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى الْمَسَاجِدِ. The beloved places to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are the places of worship. So you will see people sitting in the house of Allah, yet engaging in this worst type of sin and crime in the sight of Allah. In the house of Allah, doing things against the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, worse than this is what you sometimes see, that people even sitting in the haramain, al-haram al-makki and al-haram al-madani, Masjid al-Nabawi, ala sahibiha afdal salat al-taslim. People sometimes will be sitting there and engaged in this. Likewise, the best of the seasons, season of Hajj, and this month of Ramadan, and not only that, even during the acts of worship. So, as I said, the month of Ramadan, fasting is an act of worship, ibadah. As we are fasting for countless hours, for X amount of hours, obviously, but during those hours, as we stay away from food and drink, it is also a requirement from us that we stay away from sins. I mean, it's not only for the month of Ramadan, but the month of Ramadan is to help ourselves train, over this quality, to bring this in our life and make it a permanent one. That's the goal. So if somebody is to fail that test when he is training himself, then how is he going to master that? So during the transition of the month of Ramadan, and as engaged in this act of fasting, people engage in this type of sin. So this shows to us the level of weakness in Iman, the level of weak spirituality, and carelessness and oblivious attitude of Muslims towards the best places in Islam, the best acts of worship in Islam, and the best season of worship in Islam. Allahu Akbar. And this is why I say, this and many things like this have really plagued the Muslim Ummah, and therefore we are in this pathetic state, brothers and sisters. It is very sad and sorry to say this. As we look at this ayat, I want to highlight 2 or 3 things here. Number one, this sin of backbiting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has linked this with the worst type of act could be ever imagined. The worst type of act that you could ever imagine. Because there is no other sin in the Quran that has been mentioned in equal manner. Take note of that. There is no other sin in the Quran, in my humble opinion, in my humble understanding, limited understanding, that has been mentioned in the same manner as this sin has been mentioned. Allahu Akbar. And this suffices to say to note and realize the severity of this sin. However, and that linkage is basically eating the flesh of human being. And even the worst type of human that you come across, that you can think of, would never do that, would never imagine that. That is the connection between this sin and the outcome of that sin. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. And the next point over here is that when you analyze this ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, there are 3 things that have been associated with this sin over here to compound the crisis, basically, to make it further disgusting and very detestable in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number one, eating human flesh. It is seen as if somebody who eats a human flesh. And not only that, number 2, the flesh of your own brother. The flesh of your own brother. Imagine, somebody who engages in this sin as if he is eating the flesh of a human being, and not any human being, his own brother. And the third, and that brother who is seen in this regard as his own brother is not even alive, dead. 3 things. So, human flesh, brother, and the brother is dead. These are the 3 things that really make this sin very, very significantly severe and worse than any other type. What's the reason for this analogy and for this type of tashbih, parable here in this Quran? This sin versus eating the dead, the flesh of a dead brother. Scholars of tafsir, they mention, it is so, hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel, because this act, when somebody engages in committing this sin, he is being seen as committing this major sin. Let me retrace my word. What I'm trying to make a point here, that when somebody engages in this sin and commits this type of sin, then what happens is that the person he is backbiting is in his absence. He is not present with. So he doesn't know what he is speaking ill of the person in his absence, or what he is speaking ill of her or him, during those moments. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. So in this regard, it is same as like a dead person. So when somebody is to eat the flesh of a dead person, would not know. Similar is the case when you are to backbite in the absence, which generally happens in the absence of the person, then the person will not know it. So in this regard, it becomes the same. And therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used this tashbih, this linkage and connection between the two. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. As we have understood now the severity of this sin, now let's look at 2-3 other points. Backbiting as widely as it is known, but what is the Sharia definition of backbiting? What is the definition of backbiting in Islam? And we can clearly see the definition in the light of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is this hadith. One time Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is in Sahih Muslim, asked Sahaba radiyallahu anhum ajma'in, "Atadruna mal ghibah? Do you know what the backbiting is?" And they said, "Allah wa Rasuluhu a'lam." Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam know the best. Then Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Dhikruka akhaka bima yakrah." You make mention of your brother or sister in their absence, what they dislike to hear. What they dislike to hear. That's the definition by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one of the companions from the gathering said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asked him, "Ya Rasulullah, أَفَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ كَانَ فِي أَخِي مَا أَقُولُ?" What about, what I say is really true about him, i.e., this, what I'm saying is not a lie. He really acts in this manner. He really does this. He really has this in his life or her life. Then Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam look at this and listen to this one. He said, "إِنْ كَانَ فِيهِ مَا تَقُولُ فَقَدْ اغْتَبْتَهُ." Yes, if he has or she has that in their lives, then still you have indeed backbited the person. And then وَإِنْ لَمْ يَكُنْ فِيهِ, but if he does not have or she does not have that, then it is not even backbiting. It is worse than that. You are basically accusing person of something that he or she has not done that or don't have in their life. That is buhtan. فَقَدْ بَهَتَّهُ. As Rasul said this. So there are 3 things. One is, and Hasan Basri rahimahullah ta'ala said, and they all are from Quran. Quran has spoken about them, and all 3 are ill and evil and sinful. All 3 things. One is al-ghiba, backbiting. The other one is basically a kind of lie. And third is al-buhtan, which is a slander, slandering a person. So there is a slight difference. I will once again go over that. So you have heard the definition of ghiba. It is to speak in the absence of a person, about him. You speak about the person in their absence of things that they have it. However, they dislike to hear that. That is the definition of ghiba. And whereas the if is concerned, and تقول في الإنسان ما بلغك عنه, that you speak about a matter, you speak about a person in regards to a matter that has reached you. For example, somebody, brought to you a news, an information about XYZ, that, he is like this, she is like that. Now you heard this information about a third party, about a person through a third party, through a medium, who of course is, who is just a medium. This becomes if, basically. Why? Because after you heard that from this person without verifying that information, whether or not that is really true, whether or not the person has really done or said so, you went on spreading it. You went on, sharing it with others. And over time, you just go on social media and you start posting this and sharing with everyone on social media. It is really the disaster. Without verification, without authentifying that matter. SubhanAllah. So this is if. And what is buhtan? Buhtan is something that you accuse the person of something that they don't even have it. You say something about a person directly, that the person doesn't even have it to begin with. So these are the three things. Shaykh Ash'ari Thawi rahmatullahi alayhi further explains, as part of the definition of ghiba, which is very important, that really encompasses all aspects of ghiba. So I would like to share that with you over here. He says, and does you make mention of your brother in their absence, that they dislike to hear that. Whether you make mention of him or her, there's some physical, disability, for example, one-eyed, one hand, one leg, or black. You basically make derogatory remarks about their appearance and whatnot. Or even or you make derogatory remarks about their dress code, or about their appearance, or about any of their actions or words, or even about their religion, the religious practices, for example. Or he prays in this manner, she wears hijab in this manner, and he fasts about he fasts in the month of Ramadan in this manner, all of that. Or even in the matters of dunya, or about their family and children, and or about their conveyance, about their car, for example. He has a very bad car, and etc. And their house is very bad. So all of these things, whether it is about him directly or about those of the family members that are associated with him or her, or anything that belongs to them, any negative remark, any negative comment that they dislike to hear, it is going to be seen as such. And brothers and sisters, do realize ghibat is not only done with words, it can be also done through actions and gestures. And I share with you in the hadith, there are two hadiths in this regard. Once Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha mu'mineen, she used her hand, saying, this woman is like short like this. She is like this, she said like that. Using her hand. فَأَشَارَتْ بِيَدِهَا. She didn't say anything with her, with her word. She didn't use any words basically. However, she used a gesture to indicate about a woman that she is of short height. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he noticed that, he immediately said to her, فَقَدْ اغْتَبْتِهَا. You have indeed backbited that woman. By just saying like this. Imagine, if you say somebody is too tall, that is also a ghibat. She is too short, it's also a ghibat. Let alone about other things. SubhanAllah. So it could be through action, through gesture, anything like that. And I want to share one or two narrations. And when we think of the ahadith of Rasulullah, there are many narrations that speak ill of of this ill practices and this sin. So I want to share one or two narrations in this regard. One time, once again, Aisha radiallahu anha, all of these things were for the talbiyat of Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, the mothers of the believers. So one time, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she, while sitting in the blessed company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she said to him, "Hasbuka bi Safiya kada wa kada." Once again, this Mu'mineen, Safiya radiallahu ta'ala anha, was of short stature comparatively. So she said, basically, she used this word by what she meant with this was that she is of short stature. And she didn't really mean any ill or evil with this, but she said so. But she said this. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Innaki qulti kalimatan." You have said a kalima. You have said a kalima. If it is to be dissolved in the ocean, if it is to be mixed with the water of the ocean, it will pollute the ocean entirely. It will pollute the ocean entirely. لَمَسْجِدِ الْبَحْرَ كُلَّهَا. This one short sentence that she said, even perhaps she did not even mean any ill behind that. But she said that. But the word itself is so ill and so evil and so negative. Rasulullah said, if you are to put that water and mix it in the ocean, the entire ocean will become corrupt and polluted. And we know the ocean water, because of the salty nature, it is not easily polluted. But despite that, spiritually, Rasulullah said, the evil effect of this sin is so great, so harmful, that it is going to pollute the entire ocean. And on the other occasion, Rasulullah, as he was in the Mi'raj, on the ascension of the Mi'raj, so he passed by a group of people. They were in the very worst state. And what they were doing, this group of individuals, they had nails that were made of copper. The nails that were made of copper. And with that nails, they were scratching their own faces and chest. Imagine their nails made of copper, and they were scratching their own chests and faces with that. Rasul asked Jibreel, what's the matter with them, and who are they? And then Prophet said, these are the individuals, they had no hesitation to backbite people. So this is the punishment being given to them as a result of this. You realize, brothers and sisters, the evil effect of this. And therefore, Allah radiallahu ta'ala say, and I'm going to conclude in the next 2-3 minutes, that I want you to pay attention to this beautiful statement of Allah radiallahu ta'ala. He says, إِيَّاكُمْ وَذِكْرَ النَّاسِ فَإِنَّهُ دَاءٌ. Avoid as much as possible in the absence of people to make mention of them, unless there is a real need for it. Avoid speaking of people in their absence. Because he says, فَإِنَّهُ دَاءٌ, it is a kind of disease, because it will open up many doors, because they are not there to defend their honor. So you could go on saying many things, and then that will involve namima, ghiba, buhtan, and if all of that. So it's not one sin, it could be layers of sin rather. So therefore he said, وَإِيَّاكُمْ, and then he said, وَعَلَيْكُمْ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Instead, whenever you are in a group of people, whenever you are in a gathering, then engage in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that, he says, فَإِنَّهُ شِفَاءٌ, that one is the disease and this one is the cure. Because it is a cure for your heart. And it is going to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, as I said, brothers and sisters, there are many narrations that I have skipped, because this is sufficient for us, these 2-3 narrations that I have shared with you, to realize the severity of this sin. There are some very rare occasions from the fiqh perspective I want to bring to light as well this point, in which ghibat is permissible, in which ghibat, which is known as ghiba, according to the definition of Sharia, is permissible. But very, very extremely rare cases. One of them, I will share with you two actually. One of them is, for example, if the outcome of that is going to be greater than the harm. Maslaha is greater than the mafsada, as they have stated. For example, somebody comes to you, asks you about an individual, and he wants to marry his daughter to this person. And he asks you, obviously as a third person, perhaps you are his neighbor, or his friend, or his employer, etc., etc. How is this person? And now you know about this person that he or she has certain things that would make this person not a good fit for his daughter, or for her son, etc. So now you can't be silent here. You have to speak the truth, but make sure you speak what is only the real. Don't add anything to it. Just say, because sometimes people take this as an opportunity, they start adding many things, taking out their own grudge. So that is also another sin. So if you say what is really there, then that is permissible. And we learned that from the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Fatima bint Qais radiallahu anha, when she came to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she asked, what did she ask? Ya Rasulullah, two individuals have proposed to me. One of them is Muawiyah, and the other one is Abu Jaham radiallahu anhuma. Who should I prefer in this regard for marriage? Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam basically turned down both of them. But how did he turn down? He said, as far as Muawiyah is concerned, he said, he's a very poor person. He cannot look after you financially. And when it comes to Abu Jaham, Prophet ﷺ said, he's a very harsh man in nature. So you may have hard time, living with him. So he said this very clearly. So this shows that there are occasions in which it is permissible to speak the negative of the person in their absence. Other time, for example, to defend your own right, you go to authority and you speak ill of this person, that is also permissible. So these are the two examples that I shared with you. In the end, brothers and sisters, month of Ramadan, as we are passing through this blessed month, and I have mentioned to you that it is a month to nurture great values and bring in our lives, the great sifat. So as we fast from food and drink, it is also a month to train ourselves to fast from the sins, especially this one. especially this one. And I leave you with this hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He said, man sama, man sama يظل يأكل لحوم. He says, so I said, ما صام من ظل يأكل لحوم الناس. أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, ما صام من يظل يأكل لحوم الناس. If the person has not fasted, the translation of this hadith is, the person has not fasted who, despite staying away from food and drink, goes on with the habit of backbiting and even speaking ill of people in their absence. So do you want to lose your fast? Do you want to lose the ajr of your fast? Absolutely not. So therefore, this is the month to avoid this sin and make it a permanent habit in our life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to act upon this beautiful teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Quranic injunction, and may He help us to stay away from this deadly and devastating sin. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
جمال الوجود بذكر الإله